last I was doing this project, I was at the point of just kind of talking about what I was going to do. I had some of the parts assembled, and I don't have a completed project just yet, but I do have an update. I have, without the grips, I've basically put together the frame, and it is nice and shiny. And I'm going to talk about that in just a second because I got to get another piece. I want to give you a bit of a sneak peek of what the completed gun might look like. Okay, so here is a little bit more complete look. And I can tell you this is nice. Even though it's not completed yet by any means, this is nice. The colors have worked out perfectly. The paint seems very durable, but there is a lesson learned here. You might not be able to see it very clearly in this video, but I have quite a few blemishes on this side of the gun. Not in the grip area, but just from the trigger area up to here. So basically, I did this project using a new painting technique where I would paint the object. I put a primer coat on there. I put the color coat and I put the clear coat. But instead of just putting it on there and letting it dry, I actually got like a cheap $20 toaster oven from Walmart. And I actually baked the paint anywhere from 200 degrees to 250 degrees, though I'm more towards 250 than 200. And I'd bake it at that temperature for about 2 to 3 hours. I'd let it cool off, and then I would put on the next coat. And what this process seems to have done is it seems to have made the paint coat really durable. Now, I've looked at different reviews online of people who have done the baking method, and they say it doesn't really make the paint much more durable, and I would tend to agree. You still get scratches, you still get chips, but when you put the clear coat on there, it really seems to make a big difference in the durability of the paint. Now, like I said, I've got blemishes on here, and the way these blemishes started, and these are some of the lessons that I've learned in doing this project, and basically I'm going to be redoing this frame, but as I may have said in the previous video, I'm studying for a big engineering test coming up in the fall, and I don't have a whole lot of time to redo anything. I just kind of want to put this together to see how everything fits and how everything works, and I want to do a durability test on the paint given that I'm using this particular method. But I have a WeTech 1911 pistol that has a gold coloring to it, and they used a really thick lacquer coat to make the paint very durable. And in this case, I used lacquer. So it doesn't matter whether you use an auto lacquer, whether you use Rust-Oleum lacquer. I would just make sure you use lacquer. Regular clear coat, for some reason, the regular clear coat seems to just stick to my hands. If I like my the other project that I did, the blue gun that I put together, if I hold that gun in my hand too long, or in my hands too long, I notice a stickiness will tend to develop between my fingers and the surface of the paint. Whereas with this lacquer coating, if you put lacquer coating on it and you put a thick enough lacquer coating, you won't get that effect as easily. I'm not saying it won't happen, but it won't happen as easily. And if you put it on thick enough, it'll really hold up, and it's really durable. So the lacquer coating, I would go with lacquer instead of going with a clear coat, because lacquer seems to do a lot better job of just securing the paint. As a matter of fact, I'm not really convinced that putting on a primer coat, or at least the primer coats that are available in spray can form, really do a whole lot to protect the paint. I've had just as much success without putting on a primer coat as I've had with a primer coat. In this particular case, though, the original frame was black. So trying to paint gold directly on the black would have made the color look a little bit off. So I went ahead and did the primer. But, in my past experiences, putting on a primer coat really doesn't seem to make the paint any more durable. And like I said, doing the baking method, baking the paint, I'm not even saying that makes the paint more durable, but what it does do for you is it speeds up the process. I mean, in a matter of 2 hours, your paint is dry to the point that you can put another coat of paint on it, and you can actually touch it as well, and without doing any damage to the paint. But back to the blemish. I decided to go with a garter frame. In the original video, I was going to use the original Tokyo Marui frame and just cover up the holes. But I decided after trying that, I didn't have a whole lot of success getting the holes covered up, because no matter how much you covered up, they still kind of showed through. And because the hole goes straight through to the other side, the holes, some of the putty material that I would use would just punch right through once you put any pressure on it. So I decided to go ahead and get a garter frame. If you buy a garter frame, it's not like a computer system. It's not like plug and play. You're going to have to do some modifications to get the mainspring housing in. I had to sand the sides of the mainspring housing quite a bit to get this to go in. The sear spring had to be modified to get it to fit, because there's no slot inside for it to sit in. And like the magazine release had to be modified. It had to be sanded down. You can still see the silver from me sanding it. So this is by no means a complete, frame. I'm still doing a lot of test work here. I had to sand or file down the internal parts of the beaver tail safety in order for that to fit just right. But getting to this point, I used some putty to cover up the tactical, because I forget what particular gun that the garter frame was based on, but it has tactical written on the side here. You can kind of barely see it there. The TI is covered up, but the CAL and the TAC are not. So I basically covered this up, and then I put the primer coat over it. And when I put on the gold coat, I discovered that the putty was not sanded down quite as much as I thought it was. I thought I had sanded it flat the first time, but when you put that gold paint on there, it really showed up. It really showed up in a nasty way. So I sanded this down really quickly after it dried off, and I baked it and whatnot. I sanded that down, and I cleaned it off, and then I sprayed gold over it and put it back in the oven to rebake it. But I just kept having one problem after the next with the paint bubbling up in that area. And I don't know if it was due to some kind of a residue that was left over by the sanding that could not be cleaned off really easy, but it just kept doing it. Every time I cleaned it off, sanded it down, cleaned it off, and painted over it, it just kept doing it. And as I sanded it more, it just kind of spread back here. So I got it all over the trigger guard, and eventually it just became one big mess. So I sanded the entire thing back down to the bare metal. Not the entire thing, but this entire section. I sanded this down to the bare metal, and then I began repainting it. So I painted over a primer coat. I painted over the gold coat. Didn't bake any of that, and then I used the Tamiya color and just brushed over a clear coat for this. And it actually seemed to take just well this time, except for the fact that I have re-exposed the tactical lettering. I have a gunk of paint, which you can't really see it too well here. Well, here we go. Now you can see it just a little bit better. But you've got this, and then you've got this, just this monstrosity of a blemish right here. Now, the slide catch is going to hide some of that, but I've had the slide catch on there, and I can tell you it doesn't hide it all. So suffice it to say, this is going to be a redo in the future when I have time to do it, but I don't have the time to do it right now. I just don't. But like I said, this is the perfect opportunity for me to do a durability test because I've never really painted an object this way before. So I would like to do just to see how well it holds up over time and under a lot of abuse before I go redoing the project. You know, hopefully I only had to do the frame and not the entire slide like I did, this first go around. But yeah, there's quite a bit of fitting work that needs to be done. For the sections that came out perfect, like this side here, and the unfortunate thing is when I pick up this gun, I pick it up with my right hand because I'm right-handed. So unfortunately, I'm going to see the ugly side every time I pick this gun up. But if I pick it up with my left hand, you see the good side. And as you saw earlier with the slide on, it looks really nice. I mean, I don't know how this paint color compares to, I don't know how it compares to the Western Arms version. This is just a photo, and the photo doesn't really show the correct colors. But I really like the way this has turned out. Now, some people might not like the shininess of it. You could use a dull coat on top of your clear coat if you want. But I'm perfectly happy with the way this has turned out. I didn't really realize how nice it had turned out, though, until I started reassembling it, and I could compare and contrast the black against the gold. That's when the gold color really stands out. When you just have a gold frame and all you can see is the imperfections on this side, you're really not so sure. But having it together, I really like the way this has turned out. When it comes to painting, if you do make a mistake like this, and I'm trying to orient this gun so that it is in a direction that you will likely be viewing this, but when you have a